Hello, Charlestown. Welcome to another Friday Live at 5 with me. I'm excited to get to talk to you today. I know that there's a lot of excitement going around because Governor Holcomb has announced his 5-stage reopening plan. And I'm also excited to get to share with you what that means for city facilities going forward. Our plan looks a little bit different. And so I'll ask that you be patient. We'll make sure that we post everything for you. And wherever possible, we'll be following along with the governor's recommendations and plans. I think it's incredibly important that we remember that we're talking about a virus, and viruses are unpredictable. So even with the best laid intentions of dates and anticipation of moving through various phases, it may be that we have to backtrack at some point. And that's why I think the staged reopening that the governor has proposed is really the best way to move forward from here. Like the governor, I have developed a staged plan for reopening Charlestown city facilities based on the data that we receive about COVID-19 and our ability to manage it here locally. Indiana is a large state, and we are down here close to the Louisville metro area. And so what works for a county in one part of Indiana simply doesn't necessarily apply to us. And so all of the decisions that I've been making are based off of information that we receive here locally about our current situation where we are. And a lot of that stems from our guest from last week, Dr. Eric Yezel with the health department. I look at what's coming out of the federal government, I look at what's coming out of the state level, and I look at what's happening here at the county, and even what's right or wrong, what feels right or wrong for Charlestown. So keep in mind that everything that we are doing, we're doing with those levels in mind. So where are we today in this pandemic? Right now in the state, we have, or the state total positive count so far has been 18,630 positive cases. Unfortunately, yesterday we crossed the 1,000 mark for deaths, and that felt very heavy. We have 1,062 Hoosiers who have died from this virus. And our hearts go out to all of those families who are affected by this. For each of them, it feels far more significant maybe than for those who haven't been directly affected. Some of us are finding out daily that people that we know have received positive results. So this is still an ongoing crisis that we want to make sure that we're managing extremely effectively. Where are we in Clark County today? Currently, we have total positive cases, 316 in Clark County. And we've had 16 Clark County residents die from COVID-19. Again, we express extreme sympathy for those families who have lost loved ones for this, especially those who are currently still fighting. We want you to know that we're fighting with you, and we are concerned about your health. One of the numbers that Dr. Yezel and I talked about last week was not just the total number of cases, but the percentage of positives. So out of the tests that we run, the percentage of those tests that end up being positive is one of the key numbers that is a part of the criteria for deciding what to do going forward. And in that regard, I have a little bit of bad news. Last Friday when I talked to you and we had Dr. Yezel on, we were kind of excited because the percentage positive here in Clark County had gone down to 15. We've been watching this number since the outbreak began and they began testing. At one point, Clark County was exceptionally high, even over 20, and it hovered around 18 for a long time, which is where the state is today, around 18%. So last Friday, when we saw that come down to 15%, it gave us an indication that perhaps we were headed in the direction of being able to open up a little and move forward. Unfortunately, over the last weekend, the numbers spiked to over 17%. And then today, we're actually at 18.1. So rather than seeing that number go down the way we would want to see it go down, it's actually gone back up to 18. That means that we're kind of back at square one as far as deciding how we're going to reopen and what phase that we're in. I've created a 3-stage reopening process for the city facilities. The governor had his address at 2:30, and you can access the 5-stage reopening plan that he has put out for the state at the state website. We can post that link here in the comments when we get it available. But you can find that by going to the state's website and clicking on it, and he's got it laid out really well in some PDFs, and you can see he has a 5-stage process. This is where we differ a little bit in how we're going to reopen. Now, I want to clarify that when I'm talking about where we are in the stages of reopening, I'm talking about city facilities only. I am not restricting businesses. In that regard, we will follow what the governor has put out from the state. Also, for travel restrictions, previously I had issued an executive order that issued a travel advisory limiting local travel to only essential trips. Well, that executive order expired yesterday on the 30th, and I have not renewed it. Instead, we will follow what the governor has put forward. In the current phase there, he's still recommending local travel be for essential trips. So I'll let you go to the website there and look that up. Where we are in Charlestown right now, I think you should think of it as a phase 0, okay? That's where we are today, phase 0. It means that our city parks and facilities remain closed. City Hall remains closed to in-person business. You can continue to pay your bills online. You continue to call in. We are staffing in shifts. We're not opening all at once, and we're not in here all at once. We are still checking voicemail, answering the phones. Many of us are working remotely wherever possible. And we're also being very cautious and careful. That's where we're going to stay for a little while. I've established a 3-point criteria, and again, we'll make this public on our website under our media plan. It's important to note that the things that I'm announcing today are current as of today, okay? Any updates that we provide to the phased reopening of Charlestown City facilities will always be dated by publication date, with the last publication available on the Media Room tab on our main city's webpage, okay, on the homepage, and that's cityofcharlestown.com. So as of today, the criteria that we're using to assess how we move through these phases are as such. 1, we want to see a consistent decline in the number of symptomatic patients. This means that we want to see that percentage of positive come down. Last week, this week, it went up. So we're back at square one and staying in phase 0, largely because that number has not gone down, okay? The second thing that we want to see in the criteria is we want to see that our local hospitals are able to treat all patients without crisis care. Right now, we're in good shape. Dr. Yazel confirmed last week, and this case remains true, that we have an availability of ICU beds, their personal protection equipment is holding up, and the hospital here locally is in good shape. So in that regard, we're okay. The last criteria that I'm using to decide when we move through these phases is our testing availability. We want to make sure that we have a proven local strong test availability and contact tracing, so that when we find someone who is positive, they're able to connect who that person has been in touch with and notify those folks so that they can also practice quarantine measures and get tested. The third part of testing that we're watching is the antibody testing. As we look long-term to deal with COVID-19, it's incredibly important that we do antibody testing for those who have confirmed positives after they've recovered, so that we can begin to work towards vaccines and antivirals and all those things that make the flu less serious than COVID-19. So those are the criteria: decreased percentage positives, strong hospital availability, and proof of good, strong testing. Those are the things that I'm looking at measuring as we move forward through our phases to say, when do we move to the next phase? So where are we in regard to that? Well, we've talked about the positives, how we went from 15% last week and we're up to 18%. So that's a negative against us. Testing right now in Clark County remains open only to symptomatic patients, people who have actual symptoms of COVID-19. We did receive good news immediately after the governor's broadcast from our local health department, and I'll share that with you now. They said that Clark County has been selected for the Indiana State Department of Health Optum Serve testing site. So the Serve initiative just rolled out first thing this morning, so they just got this news. It looks like it's going to be a large-scale testing availability here in Clark County. This will include symptomatic people as well as those who have been in close contact with a COVID-19 positive patient. So that's that strong measure of testing that we want. Not just people who have symptoms, but people who have been exposed to folks that have known positives. Now, this testing will not begin here in Clark County until approximately May 14th. So we're still about 2 weeks away from even having that strong testing ability. So that's one of our criteria we have to watch. The other thing to keep in mind is that the governor has announced that the centralized contact tracing program will not begin until May 11th. So again, we're at least a week away from being able to participate in that centralized tracing. When you take these factors together, that our percentage positive went up over the week, that our testing will not be at strong levels until approximately 2 weeks from now, and that the centralized tracing will not be available for like a little over another week. It means that we're going to be here at phase 0 for at least 2 more weeks. Now, unlike the governor and some of the other plans that are opening, I am extremely reluctant to attach hard dates to our moving through these phases. This is a virus. It's unpredictable. The reality is that as we begin to open, there's a strong likelihood that we're going to have to pull back a little or stay in a phase longer than we thought. We need some flexibility. That's why we're looking at the criteria and the data to make the choice of when we move through our phases. So right now, we're at least 2 weeks away from even beginning our phase 1 reopening of city facilities. Again, I'm talking about city facilities only. Our local businesses will follow the model and the guidelines established by the governor and his plan. So let's talk through the phases and what they're going to look like. When we get to phase 1, which will be after 2 weeks of consistently declining percentages of positives and with strong testing availability and our hospitals remain in good shape, 2 weeks of that information, I will open the playgrounds and city parks except for the Family Activity Center to the general public with some limitations. We'll ask you during phase 1 to only have about 10 people in the parks at any given time, and I'll ask you to be respectful of those that want to come in and limit your time in the park to only about an hour so that other families can enjoy it. During phase 1, once we get there, facility rental of the Arts and Enrichment Center will be available for private party rentals, but only for groups of no more than 20 people. We will also charge an extra sanitization fee during this phase. During phase 1, when we get there, City Hall and police headquarters will be open for limited use. This means that staff will continue to maintain physical distancing. Those who are at high risk will continue to work from home. We'll have no large meetings of more than 10 people and no more than 2 people in our lobby at any given time. We will have the 6-foot distance marked off in the lobby for you so that you can see where that is. There'll be no social visits to City Hall during that time, only essential business. What should you be doing in Charlestown's phase 1? Once we get there in about 2 weeks, hopefully, we'll still encourage people in high-risk categories or who are elderly with underlying health issues to remain at home as much as possible. We'll still ask all individuals to observe physical distancing of at least 6 feet when you're around people who are not in your immediate family. We'll still ask you to wear face coverings when it's hard to maintain that 6-foot distance when you're out in public. And we'll continue to ask you to minimize your non-essential travel. That's all during phase 1. Again, this applies only to city facilities. And we're not in phase 1 yet. We're in phase 0 for at least a couple more weeks. How do we move from phase 1 to phase 2? We'll be able to move when we have another 2 weeks of those declining numbers. As the numbers come down and we maintain consistency of strong testing and we maintain availability of hospitals, then we will eventually move into phase 2. During phase 2, as far as your city facilities, playgrounds and city parks, except for the Family Activities Center, will reopen to the general public, but patrons will still be encouraged to maintain a physical distance from families that are not their immediate family. We'll ask you to use some common sense guidelines about how many people should be in the park at one time. So in the smaller parks, probably around 15 people. And then in Greenway, you could probably see more, 25 to 50 people, as long as folks are still keeping their distance. During phase 2, facility rental for the Arts and Enrichment Center and the Family Activities Center will be available for private parties, but we will limit it to 50 people. Again, we don't want to go in full out. We want to be very careful. And we'll still have to provide extra sanitizing there. During phase 2, City Hall and police headquarters will be open with the expectation that we'll maintain physical distancing or wear personal protection equipment, but we'll relax the limits of people who can come in during that time. What should you do during Charlestown's phase 2 when we get there? Again, people in those high-risk categories in this phase should probably still try to stay home as much as possible. All of us should continue to avoid social gatherings of more than 50 people and wear masks where we can, where it's difficult to achieve physical distancing. During that time, non-essential travel can resume as normal. Assuming that we have no rebound as we come to the end of phase 2, and assuming that those percentage positive numbers continue to decline and everything's looking good at our hospitals and we still have testing, we will enter phase 3. When we enter phase 3, all playgrounds and city parks, except for the Family Activities Center, will be open to the general public with no restrictions. The facility rental at the A&E Center and the FAC will be available for private party rentals of groups with no restrictions on size, other than the fire hazard occupancy that are always in place. And City Hall and police headquarters in phase 3 will be open with no restrictions. Individuals during phase 3, folks in high-risk categories can venture out, but they probably want to use face masks and just be a little cautious about large groups. All other individuals should continue to practice caution in large groups, and there'll be absolutely no travel restrictions. So that's a brief description of the 3-phase system that we're going to use to reopen city facilities here in Charlestown. Again, for businesses, we will follow what the state has laid out, and you can read what the governor, he's got a very clearly outlined plan for when hair salons and restaurants and all of those things can reopen, and we will certainly follow what he says with that. Now, for now, as far as where we are, this also means that our public meetings will continue to be shared by video conference. The governor today extended the state of emergency for another 30 days, and so the state of emergency is in place until June 4th. This means that your upcoming May public meetings will still be held via Zoom, and we want to encourage people to participate through distance rather than appearing in person. That means that if you want to make public comment for any of the public meetings that we have, or normally scheduled meetings, you are welcome to email those in, and they will be read on record during the meeting. You can email them to me at mayor@cityofcharlestown.com, and anything received up until 1 hour before the meeting begins will be read on the public record. This will affect the Monday, May 4th City Council meeting at 6:30, the Charlestown Redevelopment Commission meeting on May 5th, Tuesday at 6:30, and the Board of Public Works meetings that occur on the first and third Wednesdays of the month, May 6th and May 20th at 9 a.m. So I encourage anyone who would want to participate in those meetings and comment on agenda items to send those public comments through email rather than showing up in person, because City Hall will still be on restrictions, and the governor's executive order on being able to have those meetings digitally or teleconferencing or video conferencing still applies. Let me give you an update on the grant that I mentioned last time that we applied for. So the Assistance Outreach Program is still available, and we'll throw that link in the comments as well. And it's also available on our webpage. If you are diagnosed with COVID and you need to quarantine, or if you are a high-risk member of our population due to age or underlying health issues, you can sign up to get a daily call here from City Hall for us to check on you and make sure that you have what you need. And if you need groceries or medication, we can put you in touch with a volunteer out of the trustee's office who will help you get the things that you need so that you do not have to venture out and risk getting sick. That program has been operating since day one, and it continues to operate. Last week, I announced that we were applying for a grant that would potentially allow us to offer some small business relief here for folks in Charlestown that own businesses, and to provide an extended meal service, hot meal service. Unfortunately, the final round of those grants were awarded, and we did not receive one right now. However, we've not been denied. They like the idea of what we're asking for, and so they've put us on hold, not a denial. And should more money come available, which they think it will, we'll be back into consideration for that grant. So cross your fingers and your toes and hope that we get that. I also want to encourage you to sign up for our e-newsletter. One of the easiest ways to keep updated on things as we release media is to get the e-newsletter, and we'll throw that link up in the comments here as well. So you can just click, put in your email address, and receive updates from the city that way. And I want to remind you that we have a comprehensive resource page available for you on our main webpage that lists all available resources for folks who are renters or folks who are having trouble paying their mortgage, folks who need food distribution, those things. They're all available as well on our city's website. So we've talked about how we're sitting here in phase 0 right now and why, and we know that we're waiting for that percentage of positives to come down, not go up like it did this week. And we're waiting for testing to become available more strongly here in Clark County. Once we get there, we'll begin to move through the phases. Unfortunately, the governor's plan that he released and our need to go through these phases with city facilities means that we will not be able to have our Founders Day celebration this year. This is an incredibly painful announcement to have to make. This year, Charlestown's Founders Day would have been the 20th anniversary. And this year, probably more than any year, we were looking forward to being able to get together to celebrate what we hoped would be the end of this period of isolation. Unfortunately, it's simply not going to be safe to do so. The governor's plan, by the time that Founders Day would get here, would open up a few amusement parks and festivals, but only with extreme care and with social distancing. It's simply not possible for us to practice limited engagement or physical distancing with the tradition that is our Founders Day. And so we're not going to be able to have that festival this year. For anyone who has already paid a vendor fee or any fees associated with Founders Day, please feel free to get in touch with the parks director. You can email at parks@cityoftcharlestown.com, and we will make sure that we get you reimbursed. Certainly don't want you to have to pay for something that isn't going to happen. No one wants to have to do these things. As we watch various festivals and events get canceled across our region, it's very hard, especially this weekend. Oaks, Derby, all these things that folks look forward to, the various music festivals, this is hard. And our Founders Day is no exception. The time of coming together, the community, the fireworks, those are all things we're going to miss. But I want you to know this is just a pause. And I think it's incredibly important that you remember that. We will get through this. There will be other celebrations. We will pick back up. But for the safety of our community, we absolutely have to make these extremely difficult decisions. This also means that we will not open the splash pad as planned Memorial Weekend. Again, following the governor's recommendations about long-term summer activities, while he anticipates having the full state open by July 4th, it's simply not safe or in agreement with his provisions for us to reopen the splash pad as planned Memorial Weekend. As to whether or not we will open the splash pad at all this summer, we need a little bit more time and data to make that decision. So it will not open on time Memorial Weekend. We'll take the next couple of weeks to look at the data and what the results are showing, where our positive rates are, and those kinds of things, and examine our resources. And within 2 weeks, I'll be able to have that announcement for you. Financially, these are difficult times, not just for you as individuals, not just for business owners, small business owners, but also for municipalities and government entities. Our income or our revenue will also be affected by this COVID-19 emergency situation. Our financial projections are showing a pretty significant decrease in our June distribution. Many of the decisions that we make going forward will be based off of the reality of that financial stress. The governor has said that they're going to release some monies out of the CARES Act to various municipal governments, and they will do this based off of population. I will certainly be advocating every minute of every opportunity to make sure that Charlestown gets its share of those relief funds. We will continue to explore opportunities for grants that can help provide relief, and we will do everything we can to try to keep the things that we can keep going. Now, this means that we have to focus on needs, not wants. So your essential services will continue. We will pick up your trash. You can flush your toilets. Our police department will keep you safe, and our volunteer fire department will be extremely active, and they will keep you safe as well. All those essential services will run. We will be here in City Hall performing our functions and doing our jobs for you. We will have our public meetings. We will continue to work for you. But it means that we'll have to be extremely patient on some of those things that we had hoped to be able to do. We had previously announced that we were going to assess the Civic Center and hopefully get it reopened. Financially, that simply has to wait. While we previously announced that we were going to provide some effort to repair the Little League fields, financially, it's simply going to have to wait. I think of it like this. You don't go to Disney World if you can't pay your power bills and put food on the table. I am committed to not having to lay off or furlough any of our city employees. We will be making difficult decisions financially. We'll be tightening our belts, but we will make sure that we do the absolute best we can and provide the most responsibility with the tax funds that you provide us through property taxes and other revenue streams. Even if those are cut, we will find a way to get through this. So many of the decisions we make going forward will have to balance not only our fear or not only our concern over physical safety and the spread of a virus, but also the long-term financial impacts. If you have any questions at any point about these things, please feel free to reach out to me. You can always email me at mayor@cityofcharlestown.com, and I will respond to you. If you give me your phone number, I'll make sure I give you a call. We want you to know that we're here for you and that we're continuing to work through this. I'm optimistic. I'm excited about being able to watch these numbers. I think these numbers are going to come down, and we're going to be able to institute our reopening plan. I have full faith that we're going to get to do that. I'm excited that the governor has announced his plan, and I see the excitement already on Facebook for those of us who want to get our hair done. Just remember that it continues to take patience. If restaurants are only operating at 50%, then you'll need to continue to get takeout to help bolster, because they can't survive on just 50% of their patrons in-house. Your hair salons, your hairdressers are going to be excited to see you here in a couple of weeks, but they're going to have a backlog, and I bet you their phones are blowing up. So be patient with your hairdressers. They will get you in. As we look forward to summer sports, we will, of course, also have to evaluate these things. The school system certainly has some difficult decisions to make. But I know for a fact that we will all get through this together, because we are Charlestown. Thank you so much for tuning in for this brief update. I'll let you go because it's Friday night and it's a beautiful night out. And so I hope that if nothing else, you have the ability to go sit on a porch and enjoy some sun or go for a quick walk. Please just remember, it's incredibly important that you stay in stage 0 for now here in Charlestown. Continue to practice your physical distancing. Be smart, stay safe, stay home, and stay connected from a social distance. See you next week.